think I've heard that one before. There's always things that I've noticed with congregations. Though the songbook's got like 800 songs or something, it's like everybody's singing like 50 or something of them all the time. So you go to other congregations and they're singing a little bit different. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. It's St. Patrick's Day, so the day that everybody's a little Irish, except for us Scots. We just stay Scottish the whole time. We don't change at all. Especially after Scotland got beat by Ireland last night in rugby. So it's a touchy subject. I don't want to bring it up anymore. Thanks for letting me speak with you folks this morning. So hopefully it'll be encouraging to you. And I ask you now to turn over to the book of Daniel. Book of Daniel in chapter 6 there. So Daniel chapter 6. And we're going to start off in verse 3 of Daniel chapter 6. And this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps because of an excellent spirit was given him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and the satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could not find no charge or fault because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So these governors and satraps thronged before the king and said thus to him, "King Darius, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom and the administrators and satraps and counselors and advisors have consulted together and established a royal statute to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Oh, so now, O king, establish the decree, sign the writing, so that it cannot be changed, according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter." Therefore, King Darius signed the written decree. And when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home. And in his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day, and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. So with the reading of this set of verses, I guess the question comes up for a lot of people we have to always consider is, what is your opinion on gas gauges? I mean, there's some folks, when it gets down to like a quarter tank or something, we're going into the gas station and we're gonna top this thing off. Others, it's going pretty close to 80, but there's like 10 more, you're coming past an exit. No, I'm going to go up to the next exit because the gas is like 2 cents cheaper than the ones here. So I'm going to go up to there. And there's always a couple of gallons left in the tank. It's not that, it's always like that thing. So I'm just going to go along that way. And I think I got it. When I worked the road, we had this thing called a fuel transfer unit in our patrol cars. And we would, cruising along the freeway, find somebody on the side of the road. They weren't paying attention to their gas gauge. But anyway, they're out of gas, and we could give them about a gallon of gas. We actually made a profit out of that thing. We had these little envelopes we'd hand to people, and just at the time it was like $1 a gallon or something. Just put $1. These people would be so happy that they didn't have to call a wreck or something. And they put $5 in or 10 or something. So they made that thing. But I had that one time. This guy just north of 270 there on 71. He's out of gas, and I said, "So where you headed to? Cleveland?" I said, "Well, you want to top that thing off." And then you don't have to be a mechanic in a car, with cars, to know no matter whatever car you got, no matter how high performance it is, how new it is, if you don't have any gas in the tank, you're not going to go very far with this thing. It's going to go out there. But think about fuel gauges. How is your fuel gauge for you spiritually? Like Bible knowledge. I need to study more. I like to have a lot more Bible knowledge, or yeah, I want to be like that, pray without ceasing. I want to have a lot of prayer in this, on this, and living righteously. Yeah, I need to work on that. I need to get, sometimes I have trouble with certain sins and their temptations, and it bugs me. And I got these bad habits. Ever since I became a Christian, there was these other standby bad habits that I had to worldly living. And I know I need to cut those things out of my life. These things that we know about. It's like bad habits and stuff. When you hear the preacher say something, hey, you're not supposed to be doing these sort of things. And nobody's ever saying, like, really? We weren't allowed to do that? I did not know that. I did not know that. So what do we need to have in ourselves so we can do all the things that we need to do, but we don't do them? And how about the things to stop doing that we really want to do, but how do we stop doing those things? What we need is this fuel called self-discipline. This is what Daniel has, but self-discipline. It's like, when Jesus was talking to the woman at the well in John 4, and he said, God's going to want, the people that's going to worship God are going to worship Him what? They're going to worship Him in spirit and in truth. Now, truth is the roadmap that you can follow. You want to know how to get to Cleveland? You can set your little GPS thing, and it'll tell you what roads to take. No problem. You don't have any problems with it. But spirit is the car that's going to get us on our way. You want to get to Cleveland, you got to take a car, and if you don't have a car, you're not going to get to Cleveland. You got to transport yourself. You're not going to walk that way and stuff. And if you're not interested in that, like Mike said, come on, folks, let's go to Scranton, Pennsylvania. Who's with me? And everybody just, maybe you don't know how to get to Scranton, Pennsylvania. I got it on the GPS here. We can follow. If you don't want to go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, you're not going to go to Scranton, Pennsylvania. It doesn't matter what the person is going to tell you. Same thing like if you having trouble like to live that life, the preacher can tell you all you need to know, but if you don't feel like following it, you're not going to follow it. So how do we do that? How do we get that ability to do what we're supposed to do and stop doing the things that we're not supposed to do? So on this kind of thing. So we're looking at that thing, like Bible study. I would like to have more Bible study. Yeah, I'm going to do more Bible study right after I finish watching this TV program, or get off my phone and stuff. And when I'm just tempted to do things that I shouldn't be doing, but well, maybe this last time, and then I'll stop doing it, or that kind of things. We just kind of need this self-control thing. Self-control, I guess, is kind of the gas for the car to drive it spiritually to where we need to go. And we see here in verse 10, Daniel's got a lot of this thing. When he looks at there in verse 10, he finds this decree signed. He's not allowed to do prayer. Well, what's he do? He goes right up to his upper room, opens up the windows, and starts praying. He's got consistency and regularity, because it says here, he says 3 times that day he prayed and gave thanks before God, as was his custom since early days. He's got this self-discipline. I'm going to do this regardless of what the consequences are. So the good news for us, though, no matter what your gas gauge looks like, we can have that same level of self-discipline that Daniel has. So we need to imitate Daniel in getting this fuel of self-discipline. So I guess the question I always have is, biblically, what's self-discipline? You got all kinds of people got all these kind of ideas of what self-discipline is. Proverbs 25, verse 28 says that he that has no rule over his own spirit is like a city with the walls knocked down. You're going to fall if you don't have the rule over your own spirit. But sometimes we get this wrong idea about what discipline is. What's your discipline when you thought about as a kid? You're sitting there in the services and some kid's acting up, and then finally the parent has enough of it, and the kid grabs him and you start to take him out to the back, and people are like, well, the kid's going to get disciplined, isn't he? It's like that. So, or or we look at that thing. I use the term dead man walking. The kids, so his kid's going to get spanked when he gets back there and stuff. Or maybe when I was, maybe he was a kid, how did you get disciplined? You're going to get grounded or time out or something worse too. Stuff. Or the people that are super disciplined. I heard they're doing all this right stuff and over this thing. I heard a Christian comedian called these people oversaved. They're just saved, but they're doing way more stuff, and they let you know that they're doing more stuff than they're supposed to. But they're like oversaved and stuff like that. And then they let you know. Or I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. We got I think Easter's next week. You're probably going to see some foreign country where they have these parades on this day, and you see these people walking down this parade thing, and they have these big old whips, and they are actually whipping themselves. I mean, it's blood on their backs and stuff, and they're doing this. And you're going, wow, those folks sure are disciplined, aren't they? They're beating themselves up, or they're living in some monastery, and they're eating this drab food, and they're just they're hurting, they're doing all this kind of stuff to themselves. But look over in Colossians, the second chapter of Colossians. Second chapter of Colossians in verse 20. He says, therefore, if you died with Christ from the basic principles of the world, why, as though living in the world, you subject yourselves to regulations? Do not touch, do not taste, do not handle, which all concern things which perish with the using, according to the commandments and doctrines of men. These things indeed have the appearance of wisdom and self-imposed religion, false humility, and neglect of the body, but are of no value against the indulgence of the flesh. What's the thing we're in this time of Lent for a lot of people. What do they do during Lent? Well, they're going to give up something and they're not going to participate in it. Whereas that thing is like, I think we're supposed to be living that way all the time. We don't just, for a 5, 6, 8 week period, let's suffer through stuff that we don't have to suffer through, because we want people to think that we're doing it. It's this appearance to people that I'm really disciplined. That's not what we're talking about here. Trying to earn extra credit with God. So, if you got a problem with certain things, then you probably shouldn't be using it to begin with. Don't wait till this little period here in the spring to do this. So we see these kind of things. The Bible does refer sometimes to discipline, but it's like Proverbs talk about disciplining your children. Your children aren't going to. If you let them go on their own, they're just going to go off do all kinds of wild things, and they don't know any better. And that's where you come in to keep them grounded or where they're supposed to be. We've got it like Hebrews 12, God disciplining His people. He puts us into these things that the same thing with us. We don't have the Bible to guide us. We're just going to go off and do everything. So God disciplines us. No, you got to act this way. This is things that's the way you've got to be thinking and that stuff. So. But we're talking about here self-discipline. Not me forcing you folks to do something, but me forcing myself to do things. And not doing things because I have to do things. Doing things because I want to do things to please God. I want to honor God in how I live. And I can make myself do that kind of thing. And remember, I said, self-discipline is not a bad thing. But it's something we do because we love the Lord. If we look there in 1 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, Paul talks about this thing of having to discipline himself on it, which is kind of, it's a great thing for us. We see that where the apostles have this kind of problem that they have to work on it. 1 Corinthians 9, and let's go look at the verse 25 of 1 Corinthians 9. It says, and everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. It's that thing of temptations. You're not tempted by things you hate. You get tempted by things you really like. We have to always, make that common thing. We really love. There's certain sins that just makes you, it just repulses you, it makes you sick. But there's a lot of sinful stuff going. You know, maybe what? Yeah, here's something too. That I can see the draw there and stuff. But we have to look at it. So you have to discipline your body because the body really wants to do that there. We look in Galatians 5 at the fruits of the Spirit. One of the fruits of the Spirit, and they might say temperance, but it's self-control. We look in 2 Peter, the 1st chapter, when it's talking about these things that you add to your faith. You know, you add to your faith virtue. Virtue is I want to do what my faith is supposed to tell me. Then you add to that knowledge. Okay, what am I supposed to do? Then you find out knowledge. Then in following knowledge is self-control and temperance, because when you get the knowledge of it, you're going, oh, wait, we got to do that? I did not know that. Well, it's going to take some work, isn't it? Yeah, it's just like you have to, you got to command your body, because your body wants to, no, I just want to keep with those bad habits that I've always had. No, we're going to have to stop doing that. So that's just like, you know, what we have to do. It's the ability, self-control is the ability to do things you don't want to do when you're supposed to do them, and the ability to stop doing those things that you're really not supposed to be doing there. Again, a bad example of self-control was Felix, with Paul. Paul's preaching to Felix in Acts 24, and what's Felix doing? He's trembling at what he's hearing about this thing. But then he says, go away, when I've got more convenient time, I'll talk to you. He just sends Paul away. He doesn't do anything on it. He's got no self-control. His gas tank is empty. And we got to stop thinking of self-control as a bad thing. Daniel's had a lot of self-discipline, and it's a good thing. So you might be asking, how can I increase my self-control? So one time I was reading this, seeing this article in my phone. I was looking at it because, you know, I'm on my phone, and it said this thing, this article written by a Navy SEAL, how to do more pull-ups. And guys, how many of us do not want to do any more pull-ups? We want to do pull-ups, right? Because we're guys and stuff like that. And this is a Navy SEAL doing it, and those guys, I know how to do pull-ups. So I started to read this article. It was clickbait, I don't know, but I'm reading it, and the guy goes, you know, to do more pull-ups, you need to do more pull-ups. Okay, let me read that back, because, you know, I'm not a scholar. I read that thing and it said it again. It said, to do more pull-ups, you need to do more pull-ups. And then it made sense to me. So, how many pull-ups do we really want to do? I'll probably, guys would be happy if they could do 10 pull-ups at a time. So you go out there and say, I'm going to try to do my 10 pull-ups, and you do 3. And if your wife was there, she'd say, naturally, I guess Cherry only got up about to your head or something. That doesn't count. But so you can do 3. So what you said, you know, you do the 3, and you get down and you rest for a few minutes, or maybe a half hour, I don't know what it is. You just rest, and then you try to do some more. And you get like maybe 1 or 2 more, and then you try it again. You might get 1. Okay, I got about 6 pull-ups for the day. The next day, try it again. You'll get maybe the same results and stuff. After a couple of weeks, one day you get up there to start to do your pull-ups, and all of a sudden you're doing 4 pull-ups. And then in another month or something, you're doing 5 or 6. And after a year's time of doing that, you finally get to 10. But to get those 10 pull-ups in a row, it took you a long time and a lot of other pull-ups to get that, to get your body strengthened. That's the same the way with self-control. Self-control can be hard, and we don't master it right away. When you are baptized, washed away your sins, you're still worldly. You still got a lot of those bad habits and stuff. You got to break yourself of that, and they don't want to go easily. Habits and me go back a long ways. We're really good friends, and that's what I relied on here. So we're looking at that. Let's go over to 1 Timothy, and Paul understood this thing. In 1 Timothy 4, he's talking about the type of exercise we need to do in godly things here. 1 Timothy 4 in verse 6, he says, if you instruct the brethren in these things, you will be a good minister of Jesus Christ, nourished in the words of faith and the good doctrine, which you have carefully followed. But reject profane and old wives' fables, and exercise yourself for godliness. For bodily exercise profits a little, but godliness is profitable for all things, having the promise of life that is now is, and that which is to come. And this is a faithful saying, worthy of all acceptance. So Paul's saying, to get self-discipline, you're going to have to exercise yourself on this. You're not going to master this thing right away. We would like to think that once you become a Christian, all this kind of stuff comes to us easily, but it doesn't. It's work. We gotta change our stuff. You know, Paul always uses this like in 1 Corinthians 9. He kind of compares it to Olympic boxing or Olympic running, and that's what it is. It's like he says we think it's supposed to be easy, but it's not. You know, any kind of competition, if you want to compete now, you got to train your body. I come from the 1970s high school football. You're looking at a 155-pound defensive end playing on the team there. Now these guys are like 300 pounds or something. So why are they so big? Because they lift weights. They're eating correctly. And when I was a kid there in high school, we didn't touch football till like August, and then we meet at the high school, and the coach would try to run us ragged. We had like about a week of conditioning. We're putting on the pads. A couple, 3 weeks later, we're playing football. In about October, the last game was played. We put all the footballs and helmets and stuff in the lockers, and we were done. And that was it for football for the rest of it till the next August. Now these kids, football, if they're playing football, it's a 365-day thing. They're either exercising or lifting weights, or they're going to some camps to learn how to play. They got special coaches. They're doing all kinds of stuff to do. They do that so that they can compete with this thing, and that's the same thing with us. You know, Satan still wants us, so he's going to be competing with us to get this prize away from us. So if we're going to obtain that prize, we gotta work hard, because that's who we're up against and stuff. So, but it's a constant struggle on this. You know, and you don't develop like in football or just playing a piano or some musical instrument. It says you don't get that right off the bat. You got to keep practicing it. I think they even call those things exercises when you're playing these different kind of note sequences and stuff. You get your fingers working, or playing a trumpet. You get those cramps in your lips there trying to blow that stuff. You get calluses on your fingers from playing guitars and stuff. You have to build yourself up. You don't have that right all the way. It's the same thing. You don't have these skills of self-discipline developed right away. You got to work at that thing. So it's sweaty. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to be easy to say no to sin. So that's where you got to keep. It's never going to be easy to put down the phone and say, I'm going to just put down my phone and pick up the Bible and start studying it. It's like we might have noticed this. It's hard to. I'm grateful everybody's here, but it's hard to get up in the morning to come here and stuff. You got to self-discipline yourself. I'm getting up in this morning. I got to do this kind of thing here. So, and we can't let self-control be tied to our feelings. There's a lot of people do that. I'll wait till I feel like it, then I'll do this kind. I'll just wait till I'm in the mood. We look at there in Philippians 4:6. We'll probably be talking about that in your class there. But he talks about prayer here. In Philippians 4 and verse 6, he says, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God." So if you're anxious, do you feel like praying? There's a lot of people going, I can only pray when I'm calm. Whereas being anxious is the time to be praying. You gotta kick that thing into gear. I'm going to have to stop whatever I'm doing and pray about that. I was listening to some people talking about praying and meditation. He says, I usually try to pray and meditate about a half hour a day. except when I'm really stressful and a lot of stuff's happening, and a lot of things are tying on my time, then I'll do it for about an hour. So if you think you're going to cut it back, he says, no, that's when I really need it. That's when I'm going to have to force myself to do these kind of things. We don't feel like it, but we do it. We do it anyway. That's why, like Luke 9:23 says, let him deny himself and come after me. We're doing things when we deny ourselves. We're doing things that we don't want to do. I don't want to be praying. I don't maybe not want to come to services, but I'm forcing myself to do this thing. And that's why self-control is so hard, because it's about denying ourselves. And my body's saying, I don't want to stop doing this thing. And I have to say, no, we're not going to be doing it. It's mind over that. It's mind over the body. And remember, nobody's got a limited self-discipline. Nobody's got this gigantic fuel tank there. You look about David and Bathsheba, all the great things that David could do. Well, with Bathsheba, the gas tank was empty and stuff. He doesn't have the self-discipline there, and it shows there. We look at there in 1 Corinthians 10, he kind of compares our path as Christians to the Israelites crossing over the Red Sea to escape the Egyptian slavery. But he says, but then when they're in the wilderness, a lot of them fell because they did all kinds of bad stuff. They did all kinds of sinful things. And then in verse, I think, 11, he says, take heed lest you fall. He said, and he says, God's going to provide us with the escape there as we go on this thing. So no temptations taking it, it's not common, but he's going to give you the way of escape. We have to be looking for those ways of escape if we don't have that discipline in us. That's probably the same. It doesn't matter if you think you got a lot of discipline. Look for those ways of escape. David should have, the first time, I wonder if Bathsheba's taking a bath was the one time, or did he watch her, was she very regular on her cleaning things, and he's just watching her after a few days and gets this idea. The first time he saw that, he probably should have put a big old privacy fence up there and just cut that out so he didn't have to look through that stuff. But, even as somebody as strong as David can run out of gas, can run out of self-discipline. So we need to escape before we get tempted. Should we be going to some place that's going to tempt us? If you're facing it, you don't have to go there. This is probably not a place for me to go, and I'm not going to go there. So and why the phrase that why tempt faith? Why don't put yourself to the test. There's no reason for that. And you got to keep your eyes open for the temptations that you're going to be facing, and to watch out for them. Where there's a lot of them, and you got to make some changes in your schedules. Go to this place instead of going to the other places, stuff like that. Making wise choices so that we don't run out of gas. And when you're going to take a long trip, that's probably one of the first things you do is you check to make sure you got enough gas to get there. And if you don't, you fill up right away. So sometimes I wish we had a kind of a gas gauge meter in our brains. It's like, today is not a good day for me, Mick. Probably best just to stay home or something. I'm not feeling too confident. You got in Genesis 39 with Joseph and Potiphar's wife. What does he do to escape? He literally runs out of the house. And sometimes that's what we have to do. Maybe he didn't have enough self-control, but he compensates by that, by looking for those ways to escape that. Okay, real quick, 3 ideas that help us fuel up with even more discipline. Okay, number 1 is that you take confidences in the stories of others. We're looking at Daniel, we're looking at Joseph and Paul and stuff. But I don't consider these guys superhuman. They went through the same garbage that we did. But you see that they can overcome that. Or maybe you've got stories from people in your congregation or friends that have overcome that kind of stuff. And so you can take confidence that they're able to do it. You can do it as well if you're working at it. And number 2, we need to make a decision. In Daniel, in the first chapter, when he finds himself in this situation, they're taken captive, they're brought to Babylon, he says there in the first chapter that he purposed in his heart to follow God. He made a decision, he's a slave, but he makes this commitment there. And when we make a commitment to the Lord, we decide, hey, I want to do what God wants me to do, then your praying gets a lot stronger because that's your commitment. Your singing is way better. You got a sermon in each one of these songs that you're singing. You're not just singing just to take up time. Read those words and follow those things and look at those things. You get 5 or 6 little mini sermons each service that you have there. And the sermons are more interesting. I find that, we always look at the style of the preacher, but when you really need something, I'm really paying attention to what these guys have to offer, because they give you all kinds of information there that needs it. Like Joshua 24, verse 15, he says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That is, he's making a commitment. This is what we are going to do here. You got to make that decision. And sometimes you need some help. Daniel had his 3 friends there. I'm sure they consulted. You find themselves, they all work together. We look over there in the book of Hebrews, and all that time we get there, Hebrews, the 10th chapter, and this is probably the most common sermon or verse we always hear, verse 25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. We always look at it, well, why do we assemble? Yeah, we worship God, but you go up to verse 24. Verse 24, it says, let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. If you're having troubles with that, this is where you need to be around members that have their act together. That's what I was talking about. You're struggling, you want to find those people in the congregation that know how to help you. There's certain people in the congregation that's struggling, and they're not in a good spot, may not be the one that they're going to help you. You might be able to help them. But you find the ones that's got their acts together, and that's who you cling to, and you associate with them, and you get support from them. And that's for that. All right, so conclusion. It doesn't matter how good of a vehicle you got. If it's out of gas, it stops. It's not going to work. We got a lot of bad habits when we become a Christian that we've developed over all of our years. I heard somebody say, like for alcoholics, they said, when am I going to get cured of this thing? They said, well, how old were you when you started going into treatment? They said, oh, I was 45. He says, well, it took you 45 years to get to that point. It's going to take you 45 years to get that cure. So it's going to be like 90s. You should be cruising in there and stuff. So it's the longer you've been doing certain things a certain way, it's the longer it will take that amount of time to cut that stuff out there. So in Romans 12:2, we're to renew our minds. We're going to need to build up our self-control. Self-control is not bad, but it is hard. So we need to make a commitment, and we need to try and look for the victory. Sometimes we get hard on ourselves if we trip and fall. But how many times do you trip? How often do you trip? And how fast do you get back up? If you're getting back up faster and faster, and you're not falling into temptations that often, then that means you're getting stronger and stronger. So realize that, hey, I am getting stronger on this. I have to keep working on it, but I am getting better. You can pat yourself on the back. Okay, I'm not. And if you trip and fall, you're not down there as long. You're getting back up faster. That's just signs you're improving and stuff. But you have to keep trying. Know your limitations. Don't put yourself in situations you don't have to be in. It's going to cause you to really use the self-control and stuff. And get help. Surround yourself with those folks that are running the same race, and they can help you out. And don't forget to ask God for help on this. In Ephesians 3, and in verse 20, Ephesians 3, verse 20 says, now to him who by his power within us is able to do far more than we ever dared to ask or imagine, To him be glory in the church through Jesus Christ forever and ever. Amen. You know, he's able to do more in us than we ever thought possible. And he will strengthen you and give you that self-control. But you're focusing on God and not on the temptation. And the self-control gets stronger and stronger. So if there's any way we can help you tonight or this morning, please let us know. I mean, we all trip up, we all fall, but let your wishes be known while we'll stand and sing the song of invocation. Come forward if we can help you.
Hear the sweet voice of